This video is not intended for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, one and all, and welcome to Seven Kinds of Mischief. I'm your host, Stone Loki, and with me tonight is the awesome, the epic, the wonders of wonder, the doctor, the author, Adega Outlaw. How are you doing, brother?
Holy crap, I've never been introduced like that. Thank you, sir. Doing great.
Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Nobody messes with him because he's Adega Outlaw. I know it doesn't. But that's what I was thinking in my head, you know, the monster from, or the thunder from down under, the monster from mythic times. Oh, Brick coming out to a, you know, in a boxing match, getting ready to go. I actually used to do that. I loved it. I loved the intros, obviously.
Obviously.
Oh man, it's all about the intro. We
still have the best intro. Thursday night is the best intro.
Yes, Thursday nights has the very best intro. How is everybody out there doing? Cred Sox 5, good evening. Colin P. Smith, how are you doing? Like the animation reminds me of Dracula for some. Yes, dude, yes. Yes. Mark the Infinitely Tired, Parrothead, Fenrir Fire, Robert Pearson, Purple Valkyrie, the Battle Angel, Heiress of Chaos is here. Lori Roberts, the Destructor, is in the chat, folks. Psycho Dwarf 9, light the fire and get out the marshmallows. Yes, absolutely wonderful. Rambling Canuck is here. Good evening, Rambling Canuck. Darth Haster, how is everybody doing out there tonight? Cred Sox 5, I saw that on your Twitter. I just got my Ghost of Tsushima. As you, yes, can't wait to play Adega. I am loving that game. I might even do some streaming tonight. I have totally increased my way as a samurai warrior.
Once it's on PC, I'm sold.
You can do a call out battle every time you go up against a group. You can literally take 3 people out in the first moment. If you time it perfectly, you'll do like a throwdown. Almost like a quick draw, and you take the first guy out, then you take the second guy out, then you take the third guy out, and it freaks the rest of the people out, so it's easier to take the rest of them on. But I was surrounded by these 8 guys, and it was a whirlwind of blade, and they were nice. And I literally flicked the blood off my sword and sheathed it. That's how it's just like wow, 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 wow. Oh, copyright strike. But yeah, absolutely awesome. But we're not here to talk about Ghost of Tsushima. We're actually here to talk about a little history of freedom and fighting for freedom. Not
a little history.
I know. I thought about making this a 2-parter. I mean, would you be cool with that, coming back and talking more about this next week?
There is so much here. And these are out of everyone I've read, out of all the stories I've seen, the greatest heroes of all time exist here because of the measure of their character. And what we've been told in recent times is not how it is. I have the receipts.
That's right. And before this show started, Adega showed me one of the books he has been pulling this information from. What did you say? 1875.
Yeah,
The book was from
I'll
1875.
turn my camera on for just a sec. Let me get my
Let
cool
me zoom
glasses
you
on
in.
instead of my reader glasses so you don't get shocked and dismayed by the real face. This is one of the many books, and this is an old beast. There is value in finding these old gems that have the real stuff and not the story told by somebody else's story, told by somebody else's story. You get it in one ear, it comes out different. And by the time we get it nowadays, it's been totally changed where you believe a lie. I got the receipts.
He's got the receipts, folks. He has the receipts. And speaking of receipts, one of the things I was going to talk about tonight is the flag. The flag that's wait a minute. That's not the right flag.
Ooh!
That's not the right flag. Holy crap. I loaded up the wrong flag. That is actually our flag. That is the Black Dragon flag here in Valhalla. I actually got one of those in the mail today from Teespring. And let me tell you something. I am completely blown away, folks. I don't get on here and shill for stuff that is sold in the store. I've talked about, I love the hoodie and how soft it is. We all talk about the hoodies and stuff, but I want to tell you something. This isn't just sprayed on a piece of fabric. This is a part of the fabric. What did you call it? Silk
screening.
Silk screening. When you look at this flag, guys, it is a part of the flag. This isn't something that is going to peel off or get removed over time. This is a part of the flag. And I could not be happier. It looks absolutely beautiful.
There can't be anyone in the audience right now that can honestly say that is not awesome, because I think it's really, really cool.
I've never owned anything like that. I'm gonna wake up looking at that every morning because it's on my wall. And I couldn't be happier with the work that Teespring has done. When I first started looking at merch, someone told me not to use Teespring. They do not use Teespring because Teespring bad. And I decided to order a couple of products before I ever let anyone know that I had the merch on there. And I got them in and I was like, I really like these. They look really good. The stuff doesn't look like it's sprayed on. It looks like it's part of the fabric of the shirts. The dragon shows up absolutely beautiful on the back of everything it's printed on. Everything. And we've got more stuff coming for the holidays. We've got stuff coming for Halloween, and we've got stuff coming for Christmas that I hope will absolutely blow your guys' minds. So thank you, everyone out there who is thinking about buying something from the store or who has bought something from the store. Thank you so very much. I love getting on there and geeking out. And there's stuff on there now that's hidden. There's stuff on there that has not been back up for the last 3 or 4 months. I've got the Taco Tuesday line that is hidden. You cannot buy it because that will come back some point next year. And the bleeding tees, the ones with the Loki's Mornings of Mischief on the front where the letters bleed, that's gone as well. So eventually they'll pop back on there. But right now we've got plenty on the store to choose from, and I don't want anyone overwhelmed. Absolutely not. So it will be seasonal. There will be stuff you can only get throughout the seasons. But we were talking flags, and I'd like to talk about the American flag. One of the coolest things about this is that it brought women into the battle. It really brought women into the battle because you've got men out there fighting the fight. Women weren't in the armies. Didn't mean women didn't fight, but women weren't in the armies. And when word came down that Betsy Ross was the one who created that symbol of freedom. It drove women into, we need to win this war. We need to win freedom.
There was you guys have seen the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, the original that it's based off of. I mean, it's very, very close. In the boat, you will see several different characters that are representations of the actual people. There is a black gentleman there who is freed and fought for the colonist. There's also a woman in there. And some of the women made the greatest spies that America's ever had. By doing their laundry across like the Potomac or different areas around the different colonies, they would put up different colored pieces of material or different patterns. And it was just like Navy signals to where the men on the other side can see what was coming. And the British never knew. There was some that were housemaids to some of the generals. We'll get into more of it later, but
no, keep going, please. Keep going. Let us know. That's something I didn't know, that the women were spying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of them. They would. One of the things that really, really ticked off the colonists, because they, contrary to what most people are taught, they liked being British for the most part. But what happened was good old King George III decided they're a colony. They are not part of the Isles. We're going to tax them different. We're going to send our soldiers to take what they want from their homes, whether it be property, people, food, beds, guns. Yeah, guns was one of the biggest ones, because they are in a frontier area, believe it or not, and they needed to defend themselves. They needed to hunt. They needed different things. And they were taking the powder and the guns and taxing them and driving these people. And so sometimes these generals or these lieutenants and colonels would come in to these different, like New York or various different places, and they would set up camp inside people's homes, nice and cozy, using their firewood, eating their food. And the patriots would listen. And these women had a network where they could share the information with Washington or Montgomery or Lee or some of the very other soldiers or generals that Lee eventually got killed. But
the original knitting circle.
Right. The grapevine for sure. And you guys all know the stories, but I'm gonna tell you, because you know how it ends. Cornwallis surrenders. Well, the reason why he surrendered, we'll get to how he got there in a minute. There was a man, I'm trying to remember his name. I think it was Whipple, George Whipple. I can't remember. He was a black man that the British thought was a slave, and George Washington knew better. So during the day, he worked for Cornwallis in the home and acted every bit the slave. During the evening, he went to George Washington and said, "Sir, this is where they're going. This is what they're doing. This black man risked his life for the colonies." And with that information, he was the primary reason why we won that war, besides providence from God, which we'll get to later as well. There was another similar story. It just left my mind. Paul Revere. The British are coming. You know, Paul Revere. He went one way. Who went the other way? It was another African American who saw the lamps and went to the other people going to the other cities and drew them in to help come to the fight and to the aid. The Boston, the shot heard round the world. When that shot went off, it was against a free black man. And the people who were in church were told to run out and defend your country by a black preacher. a lot of things that you never knew. But guess what? This is our American history. One of the generals, I think it was General Lee, when he went in, I've got it written down. You know what? I'll look that up. Go ahead and look. I have another book that has all kinds of fun stuff in it as well. It's not quite as old. Go ahead.
One of the really interesting things that I will always give the British military credit for, they had us outnumbered, and it was very much a court of opinion in Britain that decided not to do this again. I want to tell you something. No matter how badass Washington was, no matter how much, as Adega puts it, providence from God there was, if we were dealing with, let's say, the Roman Empire instead of the Redcoats, they would have kept coming. They would never have stopped. And I have mentioned this before in other streams. It's called when the ram hits the wall. The Romans had a saying, once the ram hits the wall, there is no surrender. Once it's on, it's game on. And they would not stop until they won or they were wiped out. If England had that philosophy, they would have just kept coming from every corner of the world until it was over, until we were done. Court of public opinion in Britain was, we don't want to make an ass of ourselves. This needs to stop. There has been too many mistakes made. This has to stop. Otherwise, they would have just kept coming and kept coming until there was nothing left, and they took back the colonies, which they didn't do. Obviously.
A thing for the quality of men that were in the colonies. These were pioneers, and they were against people. You know, we had won a couple of early skirmishes. The only reason why the war started, and I had mentioned this before, is these people were loyalists, and they didn't like the taxation. They didn't like everything being taken away, and they sent their grievances to George, and George's response was, wipe them out. Anyone who resists. We will not deal with the colonies as a group. We will deal with individuals. And the people who were sent their grievances to the king basically had a death sentence put on their head. Their families, everything. So they had no option but to defend themselves or lie about their loyalties and cave. I got this little excerpt. See if my hands hold up. This book is not exactly light, and my strength doesn't exactly hold up anymore. Before I get to George, on the opposite side, one of the generals, because Cornwallis was kind of he was a smart guy. He wasn't a bad general per se. And one of the generals, they called him a sensuous man. And when you read these old texts, you have to realize Old English versus New English. Basically, that meant he was fat. And when George Washington, the first time they crossed the Potomac, they were retreating. They had been retreating for a couple of months. They had made some gains, but the British were coming on them on all kinds of fronts. The Continental Army was being reduced. By the time they crossed the Potomac, they were down to 3,000 from a much, much greater force of 21,000. But some of them they lost from death. Some of them they lost because their terms of service was up. They took their money and left. So it was 3,000 against nearly 30,000, depending on whose books you read. But I mean, that's spread out. Plus, there was 25,000 Hessians, which were basically German mercenaries towards the end of the war that came in. But Washington was retreating, and they had, in his wisdom, destroyed every boat along that river for 70 miles. And they took what they could. And again, like Loki and I said, this is God was involved. Because on the night of their retreat, one, the general wanted to sit down and eat pudding instead of attacking the day. He literally, that's what he was doing. He said, you know what? They're not going anywhere. We're taking the day off. And literally, it's in the books. He sat and ate pudding and was just as being his fat self, watching his forces sleep on the day. And then the night came. And during that night, a fog, very, very thick fog came in. And Washington and his forces took the remaining boats. And with the very last boat, the fog lifted, the British Army saw them and couldn't pursue them. They say that was one of the most brilliant retreats that had ever happened.
Chris Persia, pudding or spotted dick?
Well, it's the American version. I don't know if they had the spotted dick, but it was, according to this book that I have, they said it was pudding. So who knows? Because it's English, but it's 150-year-old English. So things meant different back then than what they did now, or what they do now. But there's a lot to this. Like Loki said, we're probably going to have to do this again. But on that retreat, the British were so overconfident. They had such superior numbers. But the one thing they did not have, and contrary to what other people say nowadays, when they're tearing down statues and toppling, they didn't have the indispensable man. That's what they called him for a reason. He was given basically field marshal status. The Continental Congress turned over everything to him. They said, it's all yours.
And Trey from Max World Entertainment says, Dabo!
There it is! It's you! Take your hat off, boy, that's a dollar bill!
And he says, Dabo, hail brothers Adega and Loki, keepers of the 7 kinds of mischief, to you and all of you within the sound of my voice. Skål! Lift your horns, raise them high, and drink till there is not a drop left. We stand together. Freedom kneels for no one.
We're talking about American history, but this is world history. The things that these people brought is stuff that is for everyone. It wasn't just for America. These are what they called inalienable rights, meaning every human deserves these.
That's right.
Here's something you're never going to hear anywhere. You get bits and pieces of it. But this is a little blurb history about George Washington before we go further into him. Let's see if I can read this properly. George Washington, descended from a distinguished family of the Wessingtons in England, was born in Westmoreland County, Virginia on February 11th, 1732. At the age of 11, he was left by the death of his father to the sole care and tendance affectionate mother. His education was limited to the common branches of learning, extending only to geometry and trigonometry. Only two. This is 150 years ago. Our kids graduating high school, how many of them have trigonometry?
None anymore.
Okay.
They're teaching social justice warrioring and what was it? Something else. Something I was reading the other day. It was it's what they're teaching in California State now.
Right. Well, before he was 16, he was doing trigonometry. And it was a little different than it is now, but still it was complicated mathematics. Surveying was his favorite study. You knew this already. In his boyhood, he was passionately fond of athletic sports and military exercises. As he grew to manhood, He was marked above all his companions for the dignity of his manners, the soundness of his judgment, and the excellence of his character. At the age of 16, he was sent by his uncle to survey a tract of land on the South Potomac, and for 3 years his life was in the wilderness. 3 years at age 16 by himself. On reaching his majority, he was already more spoken of than any other young man in the colony. So by the age he was 21, he was an extremely famous man simply because of his character, not because of any other accomplishments. The important duties which he performed in the service of the Ohio Company, the beginning of his military career, and his noted campaign with Braddock have already been it's earlier in the book, sorry. After the French and Indian War, he was numbered among Virginia House of Burgess, was then chosen a member of the Continental Congress, and was now called by the body to control the destinies of the organized mass of men composing the American Army. It goes on to talk about his dignity and everything else. But how dare anybody distract from the nobility of this man who is probably the greatest American that we have ever had? They say he was a slaver. Obviously, they didn't have any money. He came from a family that was broken and raised by his mother and was on his own by the time he was 16. He got those slaves by inheritance. And I had mentioned this before, instead of selling them to people who would abuse them, he gave them a good life, a normal life, but kept the title. Because King George said, if you sell them, you are executed. This man was a man above all other men of the time. He was called the indispensable man because of his bravery, and he had brass ones bigger than Texas. I'll explain that in a minute. Go ahead.
It's a way to rewrite history to support their narrative. It's all it is a way to rewrite history to support their own narrative. That is why people are tearing down statues. That is why statues are coming down. That is why these people are so adamant about controlling the narrative, controlling the press. And we've seen other people do that before. It's kind of funny that they point their fingers at other people and call them things like Yahtzee when they are following that playbook. Our dear Lady Gravemaster said it the other day. This is a new type of guerrilla warfare, very much like the colonists used against the British in the Revolutionary War, except it's being fought on a social level right now. And it is destroy what has made us great. If they destroy what has made us great, it's far easier for us to kneel because we believe that no one ever stood up to anything like this before. And they do not want that. They absolutely do not want that.
As long as I live and as long as I breathe, and for what I taught my children and my family will continue on, there will be no knee bending. There will never be a forgetting of who we are and where we come from and what we represent to the world. Our banner is not just with us. I could show you guys videos of people around the world that are rallying to this battle cry, because this is not just engaged in the United States. It's not just engaged in Britain. We're not alone throughout the world. And we all know the truth. Something that I saw, I think it was our Fundamentus, he calls himself the historian of the Fundamentus menace. Sorry, my word salad. Stephen, he found a video clip of these people that are doing these riots, and it became a brawl of the women within their own community. They were all fighting each other, tearing each other's clothes off, just pounding their heads into the ground. I look at that and I think, these poor people are so very ignorant of who they are, where they came from, and what they could be. You know, there's a real chance that some of them will wake up, but there's a real chance that a lot of them won't. The important thing is that you don't cower in front of this stuff. You know, I wanted to get back to Washington, because we just saw him, I just mentioned him crossing the river. And all along the coast, there was 3 different locations where, because when he went back and crossed the Delaware, he wasn't alone. There was a crossing north and south of him. The one on south was to prevent the retreat. The one on the north was to attack another group. And during the night, they came in and caught the Hessians all asleep. They were outnumbered again. They didn't have the cannons that they needed. They had a few, but they had so much more when it was all over. Because this man was brave enough to go and send his troops in to the midst of hell. Foreign warriors who took no regard of men, women, children. They stabbed everything. They took everything. This is the quality of character that our country was built on. This is the quality of character that it represents to the whole world. And this is what everyone's grabbing for. There were people that are now in jails in Hong Kong being shipped off to mainland China because they held out American flags and were singing patriotic songs from free countries. Just one really brilliant thing that I like. Not trying to get too political. Well, I'm actually getting really political. Sorry.
That's fine. No. Do not apologize.
This
please.
came out of England recently. A friend of mine over there, you guys know him. They enacted a law seeing what was happening in Hong Kong, which I absolutely thought was brilliant. They gave them citizenship. They can come to England on a free pass as citizens, a certain type of citizenship, but they basically freed all of Hong Kong if they wanted it. The bells of freedom cannot be unrung. I don't care how bad it looks, how rough it looks. When I look back at these guys, there was parts in one of the campaigns up into Canada where our soldiers, regardless of what you think of Benedict Arnold, for a time he was brilliant, and that's why it stung so much when he became a traitor. But they had suffered so much. They were eating, like I'd mentioned in World War II, they were eating their shoes, their moccasins, to survive. They had eaten every pet in certain towns just to survive. And they had conquered a good chunk of Canada, but they had to get called home. There was one point, one of the generals, this is when Montgomery died, he was making a stand against, I can't remember the name of the fort, but his cry, moments before he died, he stood up and he said, "Men of New York, do not fear to follow your commander. Charge." And they ran right into grape shot fired for cannons, but they didn't fear. How many of you could do that? I hope that we all could.
You know, some of you may know that not only did I grow up in the house of someone who served this country, but he was also, after his service, a history professor. And this was about 25 years ago. He handed me a book, and it was pretty much the entire history of the Roman Empire. And I read that book from front to back. I learned about the Republic of Rome. I learned about Rome under the Caesars. I learned about the Rome under Constantine and how they accepted Christianity. And I learned that in the end, they sold out their armies for mercenaries, and the the people that were supposed to keep armies had spent that money on wine, women, and when the empire was threatened and it fell, we descended into the Dark Ages. And I asked him, after I'd read this entire, it was almost like a Bible about Rome, is this what's going to happen to America one day? And he said, I don't know. I honestly hope it doesn't. But the brightest flame burns the quickest. And I hope that everything Adega has said about Washington, everything he said about this country, are not our finest hours. That we have more to come. That we will not kneel. Not to anyone. And Cred Sox 5, Carol just tipped a $4.99 super chat. You want to do it with me, brother?
Let's do it.
Skull!
There it is! It's beautiful! Take your hat off, boy, that's a dollar bill!
And Carol says, just a little something for a great stream. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you.
Here's something. It's I wanted to say this for the end, but I think right now is just as appropriate. 5 years ago, our my president at the time wanted to rename one of our mountains, Mount McKinley. And hey, Dave Bob, how you doing?
Yeah,
there was a reason,
brother. Greetings. Thank you so much for being here, Dave Bob. Thank you, brother.
There's a reason why he did it too. What is going on has been a battle that's been waged since, I would say, just before Kennedy. So we're deeply engaged. This is a little long. This was written in 1886, or 96, sorry. This is William McKinley. He was a president, and people don't remember our people, but I have the receipts, and it's important to collect these old books. And this is the end of about an hour-long speech that he gave. It was just after the Spain War. Okay, the war with Spain was undertaken not that the United States should increase its territory, but that oppression at our very doors should be stopped. This noble sentiment must continue to... sorry, it's old text. Sometimes it's a little hard to get through. This noble sentiment must continue to animate us. Sorry. This noble sentiment must continue to animate us, and we must give to the world the full demonstration of the sincerity of our purpose. Duty determines destiny. Destiny, which results from duty, performed may bring anxiety and peril, but never failure and dishonor. Pursuing duty may not always lead by smooth paths. Another course may look easier and more attractive, but pursuing duty for duty's sake is always sure and safe and honorable. It is not within the power of man to foretell the future and to solve the unerringly its might and problems. Almighty God has his plans and methods for human progress, and not frequently they are shrouded for the time being in impenetrable mystery. Looking back, we can see how the hand of destiny builded for us and assigned for our task, whose full meaning was not apprehended even by the wisest sentiments of their times. Our colonial ancestors did not enter upon their war originally for independence. Abraham Lincoln did not start out to free the slaves, but to save the Union. The war with Spain was not of our seeking, and some of its consequences may not be to our liking. Our vision is often defective. Short-sightedness is a common malady. But the closer we get to things or they get to us, the clearer our view and the less obscure our duty. Patriotism must be faithful as well as fervent. Statesmanship must be wise as well as fearless. Not that statesmanship which will command the applause of the hour, but the approving judgment of posterity. The progress of a nation can alone prevent degeneration. There must be new life. This is the important part that I wanted to get to. There must be new life and purpose, and there will be weaknesses and decay. There must be new life and purposes, or there will be weaknesses and decay. There must be broadening of thought as well as broadening of trade. Territorial expansion is not alone and always necessary to national advancement. There must be a constant movement towards a higher and nobler citizen, and a citizen that shall make its consequences without resort to war and achieve its greatest victories, pursuing the arts of peace. In our present situation, duty, and duty alone, should prescribe the boundary of our responsibilities and the scope of our undertaking. The final determination of our purposes awaits the action of the eminent men who are in charge by the executive with the making of the Treaty of Peace, and that the Senate of the United States, which by our Constitution must ratify and confirm. We all hope and pray that the confirmation of the peace will be a just and humane as the conduct and consummation of the war. When the work of the treaty makers is done, the work of the lawmakers will begin. The one will settle the extent and responsibilities, the other must reprove the legislation to meet them. The Army and the Navy have nobly and heroically performed their part. May God give the executive and the Congress wisdom to perform theirs. Basically, he said that in order for the country to survive, like it had, there had to be an increase in thought, in rationality, in work towards a better goal, and not forget the lessons of the past. He brought up the constitutionals. He brought up Lincoln and the Civil War people. And you can hear by his eloquence that this man was not a dumb man. And he was there to bind the principles, which is more important than the nation itself, because the principles are universal. They're not just for us. They're for everyone who's born under the title of human. But it is important for all of us to be engaged. If you sit on the fence, you're going to be hit by cars on both sides.
It's true. That is very true. And Colin P. Smith brought up something. I'm actually scrolling back up to find it. I had it sitting on the screen. Loki and Adega, are you familiar with Heinlein Starship Troopers? He was right about the crazy years, just a bit out on the timing. Something I would like to bring up, and I would love to ask you this because I don't know how you feel about this. And this might not make me a popular person here, but you know what? I'm going to say it because honestly, it's how I feel. I believe that to serve in our government, you should have to have a receipt of sacrificing for your country, whether that is serving in the military, serving in law enforcement, serving in the medical field, something that you have given your time and energy to make this country safe, to make this country a better safe place, to protect this country, to protect someone in this country. And that should be a must. Yes, we are a country of freedom. Yes, you can get voted into office. But if you've never, ever put something on the line, if you've never, ever sacrificed anything, how can you understand what this country is supposed to stand for? I don't know how you feel about that, but it is something that I've thought about a lot, especially when I read that book. When I read Starship Troopers, the movie can be whatever it wants to be, but when I read that book and I learned you had to serve in their military to be in their government, it made me think there are people in our government that have never had to sacrifice anything. They've never had to fight for their rights. They've never had to lay everything on the line. Once you're voted in, you're voted in, and you're a member of Congress, you're a member of the House, you're a mayor, you're a governor, you're whatever, a president. But if you've never sacrificed anything, if you've never sacrificed your time, if you've never done anything like that, how can you appreciate what this country is and what it stands for?
Mark brought up something. The only place where I would have a disagreement with that is I've known some really phenomenal disabled people who were unable to serve.
Yes.
Who have brilliant minds, but I understand your sentiment, and I agree that the heart of the people that go into government must go in not to make a career out of it, not to see what they can get out of it, but to serve. Serve is a key word. Like I brought up with George Washington, he was literally given the keys to the entire colonies. They gave it all to him, and he gave it back.
Yeah, he could have been King George. He could have been King George. Very easily, he could have been King George instead of the first president of the United States.
That is a man who gave his life, and he was called to serve as president more than he wanted. He wanted to retire and go away, but his people wanted him. That type of devotion to people instead of self, I think, is what you're trying to get at. When people who will give their time, talents, energies, blood, sweat, tears in the service of others, in the service of higher ideals, they would make for more fair and honest people. I've often said that, some of the greatest people that should be in the government would be the farmers. And people look at me and say, what? They're hay seeds. And I'm just going, these guys know the value of work. They think all day long. The people that we have in Congress, for the most part, think of how they manipulate things. Weasel contracts. Where a farmer thinks of
Get their friends into it. Yeah.
Where a farmer thinks about feeding people, how to maximize the crop to take care of his family and everyone else. Granted, they may not have read all the laws of the land, but you can get people that can help you find those and determine what needs to be done. There's a lot of good people out there. We outnumber and always outnumber those who don't. It's just a matter of that the good voices don't sit by idly and aren't silent. Now we're being told to put on a mask and sit down and be in your homes. Well,
follow the lines.
Follow the lines.
Like cattle.
Yep. You guys know I'm a doctor, and I know I pissed people off with this already, but I don't care. When I go out, there is a law in my state that says you go into a building, you go into public places, you must be wearing a mask. I showed you my mask before. It straps in the back, not on my ears. Why? Because I can have it dangling around my neck.
Yep.
As my mark of defiance. I'm wearing, but not the way you want me to. And I don't walk on the lines.
Nope.
I'm a free man.
Nope. I will not go into certain places because they require masks. I'll order online. I really don't care. I'm not gonna follow their lines in the store. I'm not going to go into any building and purchase anything that says you must have a mask on. I won't.
Okay,
I've had that twice. I've had that damn virus twice. Twice. I have the antibodies in my system to prove it. I can show you the receipts. I will not, and I'm the person they say is one of the most susceptible. So is Adega. I have respiratory problems. I have a heart condition, and I've got diabetes. So yeah, right there, Adega has a compromised immune system. Yeah, right there. We're the people that are supposed to be the most affected by this, and not having it.
Here's the thing. The president and the politicians are all having to play a game. It's a game over the Constitution, the rights and liberties of the people, and that's the same game that's being played throughout the rest of the world. However, recognize the game for what it is. That's what the Constitutionalists did. They originally wanted to stay with England. They just wanted to be treated fairly. And they pushed too far. The way we're pushing back tonight, because I had shared, and I think this was part of the inspiration, Alexander Hamilton, give me liberty or give me death. It was reinterpreted by a guy I follow on YouTube, John Ward, if you ever want to listen to him. He's pretty hilarious at times. But it is important to recognize that what they gave us wasn't an entitlement. It was a gift. And the gift wasn't necessarily the country, but it was a gift to understand what it means to be human. Humans have born rights to defend yourself. You have born rights to pursue happiness in whatever field or profession or whatever you want to do, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. This is the dignity of being human. And I don't want any of us to have that taken away.
No, and I want to throw this out there. James Andrew Morrison, before we get off here, guys, because we are going to continue this. In the Tom Clancy books, Jack Ryan, when Jack is POTUS, he deliberately hires people for government who have refused to be politicians. He goes for people who have worked for a living. And I'll tell you why that worked, James. He was not elected president. At the time when he did that, he was not elected president. If I remember correctly, there was a attack, and he was like 12th in line to be the president, and he was the one left. He was not elected. He would have never been elected. If that hadn't have happened, Jack would have never been president. So they had a wild gunman in the White House that played by his own rules and did his own thing and wasn't going to let anybody tell him how to do it. And that's why that worked. That's why that worked so well, was he wasn't supposed to be there. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, Carol brought up something about working in a hospital. Masks are there for a reason, but the reason should be appropriate for the cause. And the cause to hide and separate people and prevent them from opening their mouth. Think about it. It covers your mouth. You don't get to see the smiles of other people. I miss that when I go out. You don't see people greet you with their faces. I'm of the generation, and most of you are, I know, that when we grew up, we didn't have our faces stuck into an iPad or into a phone or in front of a computer. We saw people's expressions. We could read a face like people read a book. And That's very important for the psyche of the human. There's a reason why things are in such an upheaval for a lot of us. It's because we miss that.
That's right. And guys, I'm highlighting Chris's comment here because my chat is not updating. I can see everyone's chat in my chat window to my right on my other screen. I see what James Andrew Morrison said. Indeed, yes. But my chat is stuck at Chris Persia's comment here. It will not go any further down in StreamYards. We are going to end this here and pick it up next week. We're going to do a part 2 of this because we didn't even scratch the surface of this.
No.
And I want to thank Adega for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you that has stayed with us and watched this. Thank you so very much for being here. We will be back on Friday, and we are going to have a watch party on Saturday for Tropic Thunder that will start at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Guys, I just saw Trey say, great stream. We kneel for no one. Guys, don't miss Trey's stream coming up in about 4 minutes on his channel. If you haven't checked him out, check him out at Max World Entertainment. I can't put up the comment because, of course, it's stuck at Chris Persia's comment. Everyone have a great night. If you like Trey's channel, subscribe, ring that bell, hammer that bell. And if you like our content here on 7 Kinds of Mischief and in the morning on Mornings of Mischief, please subscribe and ring that bell. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Adega, for being here.
Hey, always. I get to share my passion.
Heck yeah, brother. Everyone have a great night. We will catch you guys next time. 1 week from now, we'll do part 2 of this.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.